So we've been wrapping up the priesthood series that we've been looking at, and tonight I thought we'd go a little more into it, but looking at the last shall be first, how it is that things are often turned upside down in the Bible. And as we saw, as we were looking at priesthood, what it meant to be part of priesthood really changed throughout time. And last week when we talked about kings, of where God said, you really don't want a king, and then God defined a king kind of opposite of what our worldly kings are. And we can take that theme even further and find it even more places within the Bible where God's taking what we normally understand and flipping it upside down in order for us to look at it again. So we'll do that tonight, and our schedule, we're going to have a break after this class because next week is Christmas Day, and then it's New Year's Day.
We're not meeting on Christmas Day.
So we won't meet on Christmas Day. We're not going to meet on New Year's Day. And then we get into Martin Luther King, and just, so January, we're just going to wait until we're done with this.
Come to the Martin Luther King program, though.
Monday holidays. Yeah. If you're around.
6:30 at Trinity Lutheran. We just got a good speaker confirmed today.
So we've got a time now, 6:30?
Pretty sure. Yeah.
6:30 p.m. Trinity Lutheran.
You don't have to fight over the day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're taking that day.
Yeah. So we're not competing with Martin Luther King. So we're going to take a break until January 29th will be our next class after this one. So the end of January. So Monday, January 29th, and then we'll do a 3-session series.
Starts with
January 29th, February 5th, and February 12th. We will meet on Mondays, and we're going to do like an intro into spiritual beings. So we'll be looking at like angels, demons, things like that.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
All light stuff.
29th, 5th, and 12th.
29th, 5th, and 12th.
I'm sorry, you said, okay, got it.
Yeah. And then, so we'll do that kind of out of this world series, and then we'll be into Lent. Lent is on Ash Wednesday. Lent starts Ash Wednesday, which is also Valentine's Day this year. So February 14th will be the start of Lent, and we're going to switch to meeting during Lent on Tuesdays with other UCC churches and seminary professor Dr. Julia O'Brien on the prophets. And I will send an email out with all this information.
So it started the 20th or 27th?
February 20th, that will start.
Oh, okay. And that's a Tuesday.
So that would be a
At
Tuesday
5:30.
at 5:30.
Oh, that was a little earlier.
Great. Okay. So, but watch your emails. Just want to give you a heads up on those changes.
That'll be good.
So we've got tonight, and then the next one, Monday, January 29th at 6.
Yeah.
All right, but tonight we are going to watch a video called The Last Shall Be First. So
John,
I'm going to share my screen here.
It's your job now. You did it.
And share. Oh, forgot to share the sound. That's no good. Not helpful.
I don't know how to do that. I'm trying to share this.
There's a little box at the bottom, right here.
Oh,
Just click the share sound.
if you're just trying a video non.
All right, let us begin it.
Throughout human history, many societies have been led by some kind of king or ruler. And when that king dies, he passes down his power and inheritance to his firstborn son.
This is often called the right of the firstborn, or the birthright.
And this practice wasn't just for kings, but also for families.
Yeah, fathers would pass on their authority to the firstborn as the rightful heir of the family estate.
But what if the firstborn son isn't the most qualified? What if they're bad for the job?
Yeah, history has shown that firstborns often abuse their birthright, using it for personal gain, leading to conflict and violence.
Now, the Bible came into existence in a culture where the right of the firstborn was normal and taken for granted.
But interestingly, in the story of the Bible, God consistently overturns this cultural norm.
Really?
Yeah, from the beginning, God regularly selects the younger sibling, the latecomer, and gives them the birthright. For example, in the story of the first two brothers, God elevates the second-born, Abel, over Cain, his firstborn brother.
Oh, right. And later, God says that the blessing and the inheritance will go to Isaac, Abraham's second-born, instead of Ishmael, his first.
And then when Isaac has two sons, God promises that the younger one, Jacob, will have authority over his older brother Esau and inherit God's blessing.
I'm seeing a clear pattern.
And it continues. Later, when Israel wants a king of their own, they choose this tall, powerful ruler named Saul, who then has a firstborn son named Jonathan. But God chooses the next king from a low-status family, a boy named David, who is the youngest among 8 brothers.
So for the God of the Bible, the birthright doesn't necessarily belong to those who are first or most important.
Right, God consistently challenges human-made systems of power and value that tend towards abuse, and he turns them upside down.
But this doesn't end all the conflict in the Bible. Often, the older sibling is furious about being passed up.
True, and just as often, the younger sibling who gets the birthright abuses their power too. In fact, almost all the wars and conflicts in the Bible are framed as sibling rivalries.
You mean violence between actual brothers, like Cain killing Abel?
Yes, but also the tribes and nations that descend from these earlier sibling rivals. If you track with all the genealogies in the biblical story, you see that everybody's related. It's a huge family feud.
So whether the older or the younger gets the authority, the human family is stuck in a never-ending sibling rivalry over who gets to be first.
And so here we have to turn to the story of Jesus. His earliest followers called him the firstborn of all creation.
The firstborn of creation. What does that mean?
It's a statement that describes his status. In the New Testament, Jesus is portrayed as God become human, the eternal Son of God who brought creation into being and has all authority.
So if anyone deserves the ultimate birthright, it's Jesus.
Yes, and Jesus did claim that God's royal power was arriving in a new way through himself, but it was power redefined.
Yeah, Jesus said that if you want to be first, you need to become last.
And he said that people with real authority are those who serve. In fact, this redefinition of power is explored in an early Christian poem about Jesus.
While he was in his very nature God, he didn't exploit his equality with God for self-advantage. Rather, he emptied himself of status and power and became a servant.
Jesus joined the poor and served them. And instead of fighting his rivals, he served them too. Jesus showed that true power is displayed through self-giving love.
But Jesus did confront those in power.
Yes, he challenged Israel's leaders for using their power to benefit themselves at the expense of the many.
And that's what got him killed. Like angry firstborn sons, the leaders leveraged their power to have Jesus executed.
But you can't really kill the firstborn over creation. He's the author of life itself. And so Jesus rose from the dead, and he was elevated as ruler over heaven and earth. And this earned him a new title, the firstborn from among the dead.
Then Jesus told his followers that all of his authority, his birthright, and this blessing, he was sharing it with them as sisters and brothers.
So that they could create communities that are a new kind of family, ordered by a Jesus-style redefinition of power.
These are families that set aside rivalries and invite everyone to share the responsibility of being sons and daughters in a new royal family.
And when Jesus' people discover that real power is love, that's when they truly become the family of the firstborn.
Any thoughts on our video?
What do they come? The firstborn of all creation, and then the firstborn who was dead?
Of the dead.
Of the dead.
Other thoughts from our video?
It's a nice like change of thought that Jesus tried to bring in, but it hasn't, I don't think it's ever taken hold completely. I don't think a lot of families are not families that share responsibility and are about love. Kind of. I'm feeling cynical today, I think. And there's still lots of rivalries and war. Yeah. And it's a lot of parts of the world still have that firstborn. Yeah, every firstborn boy in the Muslim is still named Muhammad and still has kind of responsibility. So, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it's still there, that idea. So, millions of years later. I don't know.
And it wasn't the firstborn female.
Well, no, that was left out completely. Yes. They just equally all had no power. First, last, whatever.
But Anna's right, it's like it has not been, widely accepted. I mean, people agree with it, but do they really accept it to serve? People want to be served, they don't want to serve. Or when they
Right.
say they serve, you're like you're in Congress and you're serving,
Mm-hmm.
but you basically serve yourself.
Shocked to hear that.
Scott,
What
he didn't know.
people
He
find-
thought elected officials were. Yeah.
All about self-giving love.
My perspective as a firstborn,
Uh-huh.
we got a lot more of the responsibility than the younger ones did.
Did you in
I'm
your
not
family?
Yeah, and
Okay.
not so much the authority.
Huh. Interesting. So you there was a definite difference in your family.
Oh yeah.
Based on when you were born.
Well, they expected the oldest to be more responsible, and I suppose is kind of reasonable. But I saw that with the girls too. I mean, they were expected to watch the little ones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially when you had larger families.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the
Mhm.
age discrepancy from the eldest to the
Yeah.
youngest can
Oh
be,
yeah.
The
that can be
8-year-old with the mother.
20 plus years.
Yeah.
That'd be my mom's side. There was 15 kids. By the time my grandma got done having babies, my oldest aunts were having babies. So
Yeah.
I got cousins that are older than aunts.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't describe that entire family as having a lot of responsibility anyplace. But that's my
Shared.
perspective.
Do you think with families changing, like where dads weren't present, then if a single mom was raising a child, did she give the firstborn male responsibility? Did they take on leadership or
As a fill-in kind of thing.
or was it more?
Probably, especially with the belief that a male would be a protector. I think. At least in the past, not so far past. I don't know what anymore.
Because it'd be cultural,
Yeah,
kind of hard to go against that.
yeah.
It's not always perfect, but I think an intact family can provide all the kids a certain amount of protection. Not always, some dads are nightmares.
Yeah.
Well, and an intact family by these standards that were being described is not counted by the number of people, but the way in which a family is living. So it's not by like what is the family makeup per se, but if you have an intact family that loves each other, you wouldn't have anybody who's being a nightmare within that.
This is true.
And then that would be a more secure type of family. Well, and Jesus presents even within, like when Jesus' family even comes, well, who's my brothers, who's my sisters, who's my mother?
Yeah.
Jesus really redefines family.
Yes. Yeah.
Beyond just biological family or family of origin into a family that does live into this type of structure where things are turned upside down, from
Mhm.
culturally turned upside down, but maybe turned back the way that they were intended.
Mhm.
As far as like back to turning it back to Garden of Eden type thing, or back to, where you're not taking power over another person,
Mm.
but that you are serving one another.
Yeah.
But yeah, but there's a lot that hasn't changed. We still have wars. We
I
have
was just
plenty of
gonna bring that
dysfunctional
up. Look,
families.
look at what's going on in the Middle East right now.
Yeah, and
And
that's
these guys are cousins.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it didn't change everything. So what has it changed? What has the whole per point like Bible story or Christmas story?
Hmm.
What has it changed?
The importance of love, maybe, even if we don't always live up to it,
Okay.
because that really is the most important thing in any family. Whatever family it is, foster or adopted, one parent, two parents, three parents, whatever. I think that's the number one thing for a child to feel secure, is that they're loved. And I think a lot of people would agree with that, even if they can't always live into it. And I think that blood, at least in American culture, is less important, maybe, in general, with at least the attempt, with the idea of democracy. Again, not always lived up to, but
Mhm.
That just because you're born into a certain family doesn't always mean success. Certain senator's son recently, for instance. I mean, it doesn't mean you're gonna have a good life, put it that way. Yeah.
I think through like history, thinking back, and Hannah, you knowing like being a historian in
Mhm.
training, could do this better. But thinking back, is there a time in history, as you look at all the global history that you know, as far back as you know, that you would rather live than now? Thinking through what rights you would have, what abilities, privileges you would have, what access you would have. Is there a time you would rather live?
I kind of like modern medicine.
Okay.
Medicine's
Right now
important.
we've got
No,
modern
that's a
Okay,
good
medicine.
point.
that's just one thing.
Some of us might not feel alive.
And I kind of like the Constitution, no
Yeah.
presumption of innocence, no cruel, unusual. Yeah, I know I want to go.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would like to visit the 60s because that was my area of study. Just
The 1960s,
Yep.
to be clear. Okay.
because all these passions were coming to the forefront.
Mhm.
Starting with some of the civil rights movement, moving into women and LGBT and Native American.
It was just
Everyone was-
that decade. There was probably more turmoil
Yes,
in America and the world than there was.
but everyone was trying to find a voice. And trying to, some people say maybe it was taken too far, but it was needed. Civil rights movement was needed. I think the feminist movement was needed.
The anti-war protests.
The
were needed.
anti-war protests, the Native
And
American
it all
finding their
came to-
voices.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Can
go
we
ahead.
Yeah.
What did she say?
She's talking, somebody's at her door.
Oh, I gotcha. Come in. I think it'd be something to live through, or to visit.
I agree completely.
All of my thesis was on that area.
So you'd go back to a time of which the generation is still alive.
Yeah, a lot of them are still
Okay.
alive, and the passion was so high. I feel like there's a lot of apathy today, cynicism, apathy. People don't care. They don't, and I kind of understand it because politics is so depressing.
Mhm.
And this is including myself, that it's easier not to follow it because it's so depressing. What politicians are doing and saying and the movements.
And another part of the street is just the clothing people wore.
Yeah.
So that we're changing things.
I could totally be a hippie.
Yeah.
The colors.
But you still can, you know.
I know, but yeah.
Love beads, I remember.
Love beads.
Would you go back any farther?
No,
Not farther
no, I
than
would not.
anybody else?
Well, the idea of going back as far as to get something more simplicity,
Okay,
because I think like, one thing, politics is, nobody works with each other anymore. They're so polarized.
Yeah.
But back, not even 20 years ago,
Mhm.
guys across the aisle.
There was a little bit more
Now,
civility.
A
Yeah.
lot more civility.
But they
Lot more-
also back in the day had duels.
Yeah, there was.
Think
it was a
about-
Well, I'm
little
not
think
talking about,
about-
I'm
yeah.
talking about like 60s, 70s,
more- or even
80s,
80s, maybe.
even the 90s, but
In
or
North-
the
in North
50s,
Dakota,
or the
anyway.
50s. But then you don't have all the electronics that separates us. All this stuff that we carry that
Or
separates us
maybe, yeah.
more than it brings us together. That's
Well,
what you're
it's a
doing
way
now.
to spread hate easier, I
Oh
think.
yeah, it's separate. It separates.
Because you can read all these, you just couldn't do that back then. Yeah.
so I'm hearing nobody would go back farther than essentially modern day.
Well, if I could go back in Mr. Peabody's machine and make sure I could come back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
then I can do lots of things I'd like to go visit.
Well,
But I would be
I-
more like a tourist,
Yeah, be a
Right.
tourist.
not a person living
But
there.
I wonder this a lot. If we went back in slavery days or some of those days, would we be the ones actually standing up and being anti-slavery and risking our lives?
well, maybe for
I don't know.
Underground
We
railroad and stuff
think
like
we
that.
would, but would
No,
we?
you don't know,
Because today I don't know.
you know.
It would be nice, but
I'd like to think that about myself. My
Right.
ancestors fought for the North. but
Right.
What would I do? I don't know.
I don't know myself.
Yeah.
Because when you're in it, you can't look back on it with any kind of.
Well, we look through here, like slavery and
Yeah.
or the way women are treated.
Yeah.
We're shocks.
But it was so much a
That-
part of their culture. You didn't
Exactly.
part-
You know.
But yeah.
So if nobody would go back for sure, like I would go back and want to live
How
in
about
this
you,
past,
Gretchen?
then I've thought about it. I don't know that there's any time where I'd want to go back to visit, but not, there's so many, like one of my favorite time periods is like the Middle Ages, horrible time for women, horrible time
Everybody,
for
really.
everybody, horrible time for health,
With a lot
I
of
just
early
think it's-
deaths. Yeah.
a lot of early death. I just think it's an interesting period.
Okay, well, what about flip that over? Would you go to the future and check things out? That I wouldn't even go as a tourist.
No, it's too scary. Okay.
Well, so then is today better than the past? Like, have there been improvements in the world? And when you think about the timeline, God's timeline is really like long.
Yeah.
And what you've described means that in many ways seems the world has gotten better through, and you take a really long view.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
has some of
Health,
this
I
been
mean, medically
affected?
for sure.
Medically,
I think gender wise in this part of the world.
so rights. in
And
a
if
lot
you
of parts
think
of the
about
world.
like both of your jobs,
Yeah.
giving, helping,
Yes.
you
I-
know.
I
mean,
can live as a
how-
single woman safely
Mhm,
here
Mhm.
anyway,
mhm.
and without stigma.
But
Just
you
don't
also,
call me an old maid.
but think back, and it's like before government took over all
Mhm.
this stuff, it was done by individuals and churches.
Yes.
They would do.
Mhm.
They were the welfare.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
where that stuff came from. It wasn't put on the government to take care of that.
No, it was more.
It was your neighbor.
Yeah. Which
Instead
could
of the,
or couldn't do it.
or
I
the,
mean,
or
it didn't
not the
always happen.
faceless government. that we have
Didn't always
now.
happen though. But
But actually, the Western democracies evolved out of serfdom,
yeah.
where I suppose it was the king or the whatever took care of us,
Yeah.
sorta.
And it
Or
would,
worked us to
And
death.
some did a better job. than
this would be such a
Yes.
different question if you were like black too.
It would
Yeah.
be.
I mean,
Well,
we're.
I think
white.
that
Yep.
to get to that question,
Mhm.
I'd rather be here now. This is what I know. This is what I am.
Yeah. Oh
you know,
yeah.
And
You have your
that's
own
where I fit.
experience.
Well, I go back to
You can't do
you. We
it.
said the healthcare.
Yeah.
Because when I was little, I was sick. I had allergies and asthma and everything else.
Okay.
I wouldn't have made it.
No.
Yeah.
Any farther back, every time an appendix.
But if
those
you,
people
but if you
die
had,
that way.
if it's like, okay, stuff you don't have to worry about, I would go back.
Well, I mean, even in the 80s, cancer was killing everybody. Now a lot of people can live through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was reading an article recently on the economy, and the economy today when you look at it compared with the past, it's actually better than it was in the past. But
Sorry,
the
people.
world, it's okay. We have a much more negative view about it.
Oh, no.
Isn't that so that
Mhm.
Social
as
media.
they've mapped it out over a couple of decades, they found that it used to
Mhm.
track a little more closely with the economy was good, the mindset about it was positive, but now there's so much of a disconnect. When the economy's bad, people assume it's bad. When the economy's
Oh.
bad, people assume it's bad. Like that they're not actually
Oh.
tracking anymore with whether or not things are good or bad. That it's right now we're in like a time, but it's a short period when you look at all the span of human history
Okay.
where people are just taking a more negative view
Oh.
of
Well,
what the world's really like.
Well,
Yeah.
and there's no one economy either.
Mhm.
Every
Right, world
country,
economy
every
challenging.
family,
Yeah.
every member in a family has its own economy.
This was
Yeah.
tracking US economy,
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
But even, like you said, even within the US economy,
right?
you
Yeah.
could have
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
somebody who's older and retired has got a different economy than somebody who's.
Right. And
Mhm.
state by state. I mean, in
Somebody
general,
younger.
North Dakota has a better. But I think what hasn't changed is every generation since the beginning has had people who are negativity and positivity, and people who have some evil in their hearts, and people who don't. I don't know if humanity's really changed at all. I don't know.
You're right there. There's money doesn't change.
Well, Cain's attitude, I was reading, and it was like, he ain't heavy because he's my brother. And he's like, who is my brother? Am I my brother's keeper? Goodness.
But according to Jesus, you are your brother's keeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Cain was talking to God and he's like, what do you mean Abel's gone? Am I supposed to be looking out for him? I didn't remember
Understand?
how much he hid the concept that he had killed his brother.
Family is so interesting too.
Yeah.
Like my Muslim friends, their family is really important. I mean, you live together always, whereas I think a lot of us as adults, we move away. You find your own family, chosen family.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's true for me. I'm not like best friends with any of my siblings or my parents, but I know some people are. But yeah.
In Palestine, when they're building their houses,
Mhm.
a lot of times they'll build a house with
Mhm.
another setup, so another house can be built on top of it.
Yeah,
And that's where the kids will live.
yeah.
They plan that in.
Moving. Yeah, you just plan to stay together for life.
Mhm.
So let's look at Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 5. So Genesis chapter 4.
Versus what?
1 through 5. So now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was the keeper of sheep, and Cain the tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought the firstlings of his flock, their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell.
I mean, why was God so unfair?
Mine was written so differently than that.
Yeah.
It said, yeah, okay, let's see. Cain brought to the Lord a gift from his farm produce, while Abel brought several choice lambs from the best of his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his offering, but he did not accept Cain and his offering. This made Cain very angry and dejected. Why are you so angry? The Lord asked him. Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you respond in the right way. But if you refuse to respond correctly, then watch out. Sin is waiting to attack and destroy you, and you must subdue it.
Mine says if you intend good. What was yours again? Like he wasn't intending to.
If you refuse to respond correctly,
Okay.
watch out.
Mine says if you intend good, you can hold up your head.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And so like he was given another opportunity, it says in mine,
I guess to be,
to straighten that out.
well, yeah.
And he
Hmm.
showed.
Mine doesn't say for choice though. It just says one does the fruit of the soil and the other does the firstborn.
Yeah,
Feels like we're missing something.
is yours very
Well, because
different?
it must have been his heart that wasn't right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
you know,
more
it-
inner.
It was
Mhm.
in,
He must have
not-
been-
It wasn't the stuff that. brought
Maybe
it, it
he
was his heart.
sulkily brought it to him. I don't know.
I'm very dense. Why did God not accept the second offering? I missed because I was away from here, but yeah. And
I think it's
why-
vague.
Huh?
I don't think it's very clear.
Well, and we, it's common to ask why.
Mhm.
Does it matter? Does it matter why?
Hmm.
Should it have why God liked one over the other?
So he could get it right.
So we believe in a just God.
Or
Yes,
maybe
sure.
part of it's focused on how we respond, even when we think things may not be fair.
That he should have responded in a way of humility and humbleness instead of anger and
When you're put in second place, like that.
yeah.
Right.
I think it has to do with motives,
No.
why you give something.
Yeah, I guess.
Is it the best you can give? Is it?
So Cain, the Hebrew word underneath Cain, so that name means to create,
Mhm.
and Abel means nothing. It's like hevel, it's like emptiness, like vanity, like in Ecclesiastes, all is vanity, all is
Okay.
nothingness,
Mine is Cain means a smith or iron.
which would be some related with creating.
And Abel's name means something transitory. Okay.
I'm
Transitory.
sure it's a word that there are words that have many meanings.
As indeed his life proves to be. I'm sure they do. Oh, this says it's the ancient tension between agriculture and hunter-gatherers.
Oh,
God rejects an offering from the ground that has been cursed,
so
but accepts an offering that involves sacrifice. Oh. Possibly turning the expression of from goddess worship toward the worship of a male god. Oh my goodness. It's getting deeper here.
Let's move forward into Genesis 17.
17?
Genesis 17 verses 15 through 21.
I'm sorry,
Got
what chapter? I screwed up.
Genesis 17.
Sorry, I screwed up. Okay. Got it.
God said to Abraham, "As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall give rise to nation. Kings of peoples shall come from her." Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, "Can a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Can Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child?" And Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live in your sight." God said, "No, but your wife Sarah shall bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you, and I will bless him and make him fruitful and exceedingly numerous. He shall be the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this season next year."
Ishmael was only 13.
So here's that story again that they mentioned with Abraham and Sarah. Sometimes we gloss over Ishmael, but Ishmael was born first, firstborn.
Yeah.
And again, Isaac is the one that's lifted up in a different way. which doesn't mean in this one, Ishmael still is blessed.
His name didn't live on. Though.
Well, they called the people Ishmaelites.
Well, literally, but in our consciousness, we don't really talk about Ishmael.
At least not in our story.
Yeah. Well, yes, that is true, Gretchen.
In other stories, it does.
Islam, but baby Ishmael. Is there another one?
Yep, let's go to 25. Genesis chapter 25, verses 21 through 26. So Genesis 25, verse 21. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer. And his wife Rebekah conceived. The children struggled within her, and she said, "If it is to be this way, why do I live?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the elder shall serve the younger."
Hmm.
When her time came to give birth, she was at hand. There were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy mantle. So they named him Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand gripping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them.
They were so literal. Heel grabber. Jacob.
Yeah, heel grabber and red, like hairy red.
I would have been named bald. I was bald. I was too. That would have been terrible. Baldy.
Baldy all day, all the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So early stories, the Bible's beginning with these major families that we're building the rest of the stories on, and everything that's the cultural norm on how families should be structured are being turned upside down.
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
So the bigger picture is turning things upside down. If you identify with the one who's always getting the rougher part, that's a part of your personality, maybe. Says more about you. Yeah.
I'm skipping ahead that Isaac loved Esau, Rebecca loved Jacob.
Favoritism.
Yep.
Because Isaac loved wild game.
Yeah.
You can't read this too literally. These parts.
Let's go to Matthew. So the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20. No, another feud.
Oh no. Darn it.
Matthew chapter 20, verses 20 through 28. Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons. Kneeling before him, she asked favor of him. And he said to her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Declare that these two sons of mine will sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your kingdom." But Jesus answered, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink?" They said to him, "We are able." He said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left, it is not mine to grant, but is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard it, they were angry with the two brothers. But Jesus called them to him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. It will not be so among you, but whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave, just as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." So why were the 10 disciples mad at the two brothers?
It was the mom's fault.
It was the mom's fault.
But
Maybe they put her.
maybe
up to
they
it.
prodded her. I don't. We don't know. I guess.
Well, and I mean, these are whole family systems that are trying to be broken down.
Mhm.
As far as where do kids learn that the first should be getting more privilege
From their parents.
from the
Yeah,
parents? We're
yeah.
passing them down generations.
Yeah.
And so I think it's appropriate that the mom's involved in this one, because it's not the boy's fault and it's not the mom's fault. It's all a part of the whole
Yeah.
like structure.
They're used to that. Jesus has favored them, so they must be able to sit
I've got a little note here. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
anything, but it said women, and especially older women, could get away with requests and demands that men could not.
there. Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm.
Yay.
Interesting. Huh.
So what rights and powers, what does Jesus say to those who want power? And what comes with being first?
Service.
Service.
To be to serve others. Sacrifice, drinking his same cup.
Mhm.
Tragedy. Servant leadership.
Paul became more like the leader that he had expected others to be.
He got the message, sort of.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Much as he could.
Mhm.
Let go of a lot of what power meant.
Mhm. And the power he had.
Yeah.
Yeah. The early communities of apostles trying to
Privilege.
share power. Yeah.
Yeah. Tried to share all things among them.
Yeah.
One another. Didn't last super long,
No.
but that's how Acts begins.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. All things shared.
And I think in part, I mean, just like anything, the more we practice at it. So the community in Acts, they practiced sharing all things, but it had been generations where all things were not shared.
Right.
So it failed. So
fail.
we pick it up again and we fail and we pick it up again and we fail. And I don't know. I hope over time we get better at it if we keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But they did have that. And even the Ishmaelites had that, they were you has to be hospitable to anybody who comes up to your door, says,
Yeah.
can I
That's
need lodging for the night.
a glass
Supposed
of
to take 'em
water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Forced hospitality. But yes, that idea was there for sure.
But to be of service to others has been essential even in the early laws.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
which the Good Samaritan did, and
Yeah.
He wasn't even raised.
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Overcame
mixed
his-
bag up there.
Yeah.
Maybe, I wonder if there's some aspects of serving others that is a part of human nature.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That sometimes we focus on the flaws of human nature, but people often look for ways to love or be
To
loved.
give.
Mhm.
They look for ways to serve.
Yeah.
Well, and if you think about, okay, if you go speak to a legislator, or you email them, or you text them, or you lobby,
Yeah.
it's not the same as what you hear on the news.
No.
And why are they doing that? Well, because of greed. I want my station to be more popular, so we're going to find people who are going to dig up more dirt on people
they
and
want me
express all the
Elected.
and it isn't always
No.
even the truth. It's just an aspect to get more ratings and to get more
Right.
controversy going. I mean, we're asking for it in a sense, asking for the controversy instead of going, hey, wait, now this person did some good things. Even what we're drumming up from history, it's like, this person was seen as a good leader, but wait a minute, we found some dirt on him.
Yeah,
Now we're going
nobody's
to
perfect. But
publicize.
when I think of people
Instead of the
in your
good.
life, though, that you actually know,
Mhm.
most of them, I think, would serve you. Our servers, everyone in this church,
Mhm.
most people at my job, Well, I mean,
Try to do whatever they can. For
yeah,
Mhm.
just your clientele that comes
Yeah.
into the library. That's,
and sometimes, yeah, and sometimes, yeah, you, a politician or something, but then if you meet them and they, yeah.
I think it even is explained in evolutionary biology, we're like meant to survive as a species.
Yes,
So it makes sense to take care of each
To-
other
to
as a species.
live as community and, yes, depend on one another. That is true.
You'll even see that in animals where they protect their own young and they pick each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Well, how about if we look at the Christmas story, we won't read it, but when you think through the Christmas story, what things are happening in the Christmas story that continues this theme of the last shall be first or turning things upside down?
I think our pageant was full of love.
Pageant?
Like Jean said, yeah, she wrote on this. She's like, it was ages 2 to 82, and I think it was fabulous. She said, you guys put out a story with all ages and all. Yeah,
There was.
everybody helped one another. Yes. Thank you all.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
I would say in that story, it's the giving that would answer that question.
well, the upside down part of it, bringing in the shepherds. Tell
Yeah,
them first. The
yeah.
lowest of the low of the shepherd were the shepherds, and they were told first.
And it was only an accident that Harold, like King Herod found out.
Long while back, yeah, it took them a couple of years.
And it took him a
Okay.
long time, but
It was written, and it was written.
yeah.
Of course, they didn't want to.
But that the animals and the shepherds found out first. And it was out of wedlock. I mean, they were engaged, so they were already in a contractual relationship, but they were not yet married.
What about the living quarters? It's the lowly to, there was no room in the inn. They could have a place in an inn, you know, a room, or whatever. They didn't. They had the lowly stable.
Yeah, I've done some reading that what was that actually like? They probably didn't have like barns like we have now. Some scholars think that maybe it was a cave, that the animals were maybe kept in a cave. Others think that the rooms were structured such that you would give the upper room to guests, and so that they didn't have any other space in the guest quarters. But then the lower level of the house would be where you would have the animals, because then you would have heat. So it was still within the house, and it would have been a good place actually for childbirth to occur. Because it would have been quieter and more private than in the cramped guest quarters. I thought that was interesting.
And that at that time, the guest quarters were pretty crowded.
The
'cause
guest quarters would have
everybody
been crowded. Yeah.
There's no room upstairs. And
So-
you're next to the central heating system.
Right. So they might have been invited into, instead of being in the guest quarters, they were actually invited into their private family quarters, was another possibility. Which that kind of changes some of the, I don't know. I don't know what it changes. I haven't thought a whole lot about it, but it's an interesting concept of what it'd mean for that family if they did invite them into their private family quarters, not the guest quarters. But they definitely, I mean, they weren't you would expect a king to be born from the next in line from a lineage of king,
Yes.
like into a lot of money or a lot of wealth.
A lot of fanfare.
Yeah.
You did have fanfare.
Yeah.
You did have
There,
fanfare.
there was
You
a
had fanfare.
there was a big star in the sky, and there
But
were
there
angels.
was no
Thingy?
trumpets.
Angels are singing. Yeah, a lot.
But it wasn't the fanfare
Sure.
people expected.
So they weren't listening.
Well, keep pondering. How is it that things are turned upside down? And any last thoughts for tonight? Our next class, so reminder, January 29th.
Good.
So we'll be into this next week's Christmas Day, and we've got Christmas Eve services. So we'll have Advent worship is at 10 o'clock on Sunday, and then Christmas Eve candlelight lessons and carols is at 5:30 on Sunday.